For today's video, I'm going to be going over my shrimp stocking strategy for all of my aquariums. I've had a few people ask me how many shrimp they should keep in their tanks recently, so I thought I'd share my strategy because it works in all types of aquarium regardless of the actual intent behind it. Now I will be focusing on Neocaridina shrimp like cherry shrimp for the bulk of this video, but the majority of things I mention should apply to all species of shrimp that can breed in fresh water. So I want to start by talking about how many shrimp you should keep per gallon or per litre of water. In short, the answer is that it depends, and it's actually very different for every single aquarium setup. You'll often see general stocking advice online, but in many cases this specific guidance is aimed at algae control with shrimp rather than just generic stocking for a shrimp tank. For example, in George Farmer's aquascaping book, he recommends 1 cherry shrimp per gallon of water, or roughly 1 shrimp per 4 litres, but that's specifically in the context of using cherry shrimp to manage algae. In my own experience, I've kept healthy colonies of between 80 and 100 Neocaridina shrimp in my 25 litre or 6.6 US gallon tanks without issue. This works out to be around 15 shrimp per gallon or 4 shrimp per litre, which is often higher than the average recommendation you'll see on websites, but that's because these specific tanks are primarily focused towards shrimp keeping. And that is something that's important to note because your personal goals matter a lot here. For example, some aquascapers prefer a very light stocking of bright red cherry shrimp to provide a pop of colour without overwhelming the overall design of their aquascape. On the other hand, shrimp breeders often stock far more heavily to maximise the yield of their specific shrimp breeding tank. I'd guess that most people will find themselves somewhere between these two approaches, so that's where this strategy comes in. In my experience, the main key is balance, and I'll go over this in more detail later in the video. But I honestly think that you can stock your tank very lightly, especially with Neocaridina shrimp, because they are so easy to breed, and then leave them for nature to take its course and the population to increase to a natural level that your tank can support. As long as there's enough food, minerals and stable water parameters to support the colony, you'd be surprised how densely packed you can get a shrimp tank without any issues in the aquarium. Now that brings me on to another very common question that I see, and that's how many shrimp you actually need to start a thriving shrimp colony. Technically, the bare minimum is just 2 shrimp, 1 male, 1 female, but in practice I usually recommend starting with more. This is because most people asking this kind of question are new to the shrimp keeping hobby and probably can't tell the difference between male and female shrimp, and a lot of staff at local aquatic shops struggle too. If you're buying your shrimp online from a dedicated breeder like I usually do, you have a lot more power because you can specifically request the breeder, who is very experienced, to choose out a mixture of male and female shrimp for you. But that's why I usually recommend people start with at least 10 shrimp, because it's a solid starting point and it gives you a good chance of getting at least 1 male in the group, because a lot of people can end up with female only groups because of the stronger coloration on female shrimp. All of the cherry shrimp in my fish room actually came from 2 separate batches of 10 shrimp that I got from 2 different sellers, and then ended up merging them into 1 tank and just let them breed from there, and then I moved different shrimp to different tanks, and I've lost count of how many I've gave away. My yellow Neocaridina shrimp have a similar story, but they started with a single batch of 10 shrimp that I just left to breed to capacity of the original setup I had them in, and then again I moved them to different tanks, and again I gave a lot of them away too. Earlier in the video I mentioned that stocking a shrimp tank is all about balance, and I like to think of it as a triangle made up of 3 key elements, which are food, minerals and stable water parameters. If any of these starts to fall short, then your shrimp colony can quickly run into problems and it might even fail. Many people, myself included, use the targeted feeding approach to supplement the natural food sources in the aquarium that your shrimp will usually eat. This involves you adding suitable foods to your tank to supplement the algae and biofilm, and personally I do like to get something with a little bit of protein in there because I've always had better breeding yields when there's protein in the shrimp's diet. But because you're artificially increasing the food supply in the tank, this lets you grow a far larger colony than that tank would be able to support. But if you do take this approach, you have to be consistent with adding the additional food to the tank. This is because if you suddenly stop adding the additional food without reducing your colony size by giving shrimp away or moving them to a different tank, you may introduce food scarcity issues leading to starvation and potentially cause the colony to fail. Now I'm actually doing the opposite to this with some of my new shrimp tanks that I've just set up, where I'm going to only add a small amount of high protein food once per week, and the rest of the time they're just going to be eating the algae and biofilm in their tank to intentionally have smaller colonies in the aquarium. In theory, this should keep the population low and encourage the shrimp to rely on the naturally occurring algae and biofilm in the tank, keeping their actual population far more manageable. The second side of the triangle are the minerals that you have in your water, specifically calcium and magnesium, which are essential for proper molting and letting your shrimp grow. If you live in an area with hard tap water, this probably isn't going to be something that you need to worry about, as your tap water likely provides all the minerals that your shrimp require. But I live in a soft water area where the GH or general hardness of my tap water is only 4, which is the minimum recommendation for Neocaridina shrimp which I keep. If you do live in a soft water region like myself, then you can get shrimp specific mineral salts to boost the calcium and magnesium levels in your tank to make sure that your shrimp can molt. But in my experience, I've used these and I really didn't see much of a difference, so I honestly think that as long as you're regularly testing your water with a GH test kit and it stays at 4 or above, your shrimp will be fine and they'll be able to molt and grow and breed without issue. The third part of the triangle is the water parameters, specifically ammonia and nitrite levels, which can cause problems for your shrimp. When you increase the food supply through targeted feeding, you're also increasing the waste that your shrimp colony produces, putting slightly more pressure on your filtration system. Fortunately, most modern filters have plenty of surface area for beneficial bacteria to grow and keep your water parameters stable, and there's plenty of live plants in the hobby that are easy to keep and can help you do this too. Thankfully, shrimp have a far lower bioload than fish, which makes it far easier to increase their food intake without risking ammonia spikes in your aquarium. In my experience, as the population of your shrimp colony grows, a natural balance tends to form and a survival of the fittest system kicks in. This is because larger shrimp will often outcompete the younger ones for food, which creates a soft population cap based on how much food you're putting into the tank. For example, in my cherry shrimp tank, I feed the same amount of microgranules in a mini algae wafer every single day. Along with the natural algae and biofilm that grows in this tank, this feeding strategy consistently supports a colony of around 80 to 100 cherry shrimp. Now I'm happy with that population because I'm not breeding for profit or anything like that, and I see no reason to increase the food supply further, and I'm happy letting the colony stay within this range. But provided I could maintain safe and stable water parameters and provide enough magnesium and calcium for my shrimp to grow, I could just keep adding more food to the tank to slowly increase the population if needed. Now I want to touch on the importance of plants, because if your main goal is to grow a large shrimp colony in your aquarium, adding live plants is one of the best things you can do. Not only will your live plants increase the available grazing surface for your shrimp, but they also provide natural filtration, helping to maintain safe and stable water parameters. Easy to keep fast-growing plants like Hygrophila polysperma, Limnophila sessiliflora and Rotala rotundifolia are particularly useful for this type of use case. Not only do they grow fast enough to help purify the water, they also have enough surface area on their leaves for shrimp to graze on algae and biofilm that will grow. One of my favourite shrimp tanks that I currently keep features a dense pearlweed jungle, and it provides plenty of surface area, and I really don't need to add much food to this tank because the shrimp are just constantly feeding on algae and biofilm grown on the pearlweed. Floating plants like water lettuce are also a fantastic option for this kind of strategy. I've read a lot of research papers, and water lettuce is consistently one of the top 3 plants for natural water purification, but on top of that, the long flowing roots can also create plenty of grazing space to increase the algae and biofilm that your shrimp can eat. Moss is another excellent option if you're only looking to increase the amount of grazing space in your tank because it can add a lot of surface area, but it does tend to grow way too slowly to offer any real benefit for natural water purification. Now, I'm a huge fan of planted tanks, and in my experience, choosing the right plants can make the job of balancing the food, minerals and water parameters in your shrimp tank a lot easier. But like I mentioned earlier, not everyone wants a huge shrimp colony in their aquarium. It's just a little tip that you can put to use in your tank if you are wanting to try and grow the largest colony possible. Anyway, just to try and wrap things up quickly, I recommend starting with around 10 cherry shrimp and letting them breed naturally to fill out the tank over time. If you want to increase the shrimp population beyond what your tank can naturally support, you can take measures such as adding plants to increase the grazing areas in the tank, or you can add supplemental food, but it can quickly increase the population. Your tank's general hardness and filtration will play a role in maintaining a healthy shrimp colony, but in most cases these really shouldn't be major issues for most people. Live plants can make the whole process a lot easier by helping with both filtration and offering a lot of grazing space, and as a bonus, they can even help certain colours of shrimp pop on the plants, making it a lot easier to see them. Beyond that though, it's really just about observing your tank, enjoying the process and keeping on top of your water parameters. Anyway guys, that brings the video to an end. Thanks for watching, I hope it's been helpful and good luck with your shrimp tanks.